Well, points to that kid for being creative with his bullying. I mean, it's not every day you hear them use a sophist. Kids nowadays rely way too much on social media to do all of the work for them. The first episode of this little franchise opened with a little preview. Yeah, good idea. Let's just move on to the opening, which I gotta say is a charming little tune. I mean, it's by no means a masterpiece or even all that in tune with the voice actresses of our three main characters singing it, but it does have a lot of energy, mostly thanks to some great instrumentals that are going to be stuck in my head for the next few months. I think what I really like about it is that it feels like a genuine sing-along and not some epic piece, which I do like those, but for this show, I think it matches better with its more slice-of-life themes and tone. The visuals back this up, while also giving us a good idea of each of our aforementioned main heroines' personalities, as well as that of their friends and family. I think this opening is considered a classic, and for good reason. The actual episode opened at an old shop called the Mahodo. And it was owned by this not at all suspicious looking lady named Majurika. Geez, Zim's newest plan is a lot more intricate than usual. Not kidding, this actress has actually done the Japanese dub of Invader Zim. Just go watch Enter the Flukeless on Netflix for that dub. We'll get back to her later, but now it's time to introduce our main heroine, Doremi Harukaze. And I'm guessing she and Akari went to the same barber because both of their hair buns seem to be living organisms. Not as though her face wasn't expressive enough, as early on we could already see Yoshihiko Umakoshi's more cartoonish designs, allowing for a lot more expressions from both Doremi and her family, which include her little sister Pop and their parents. Hey look kids, domestic violence can be funny and not at all emotionally scarring. Seriously, it's because of stuff like this that this girl is eventually going to turn into a sweet-hating goth loli. I'm guessing she was also related to this dude, as she considered herself to be the most misfortunate girl in the world, partially because of her crazy-ass family, but also because she didn't have the best luck when it came to romance, to the point that she started to rely on witchcraft in the hopes it would give her some buffs. Her latest crush was on the ace of her school's soccer team, who just so happened to share the same surname as one of the show's co-directors.
Coincidence? I think not!
Okay, to be fair, Director Igarashi's first episode would actually be the fourth of this season, but still, he might have been on staff at this time. Then again, as long as he's not voicing an obvious self-insert, then we're cool. During these first few scenes, we also got a good look at the very unique art style of the show. Now, of course, I've already talked about Umakoshi's unique character designs, both here and in my Heartcatch reviews, but they actually stand out even more in this show because of the backgrounds. Now, I make absolutely no claim to be an art expert, so feel free to correct me in the comment section. So, from my very limited perspective, the backgrounds seem to use a lot of watercolors and kind of have a sort of pointillism effect to them. I'm kind of two minds about this artistic choice. On the one hand, God, these are some pretty backgrounds. Like, I honestly want to take a few of these shots and just hang them up on my wall. On the other hand, they kind of clash with the characters. Umakoshi often designs his characters with much more bolder and brighter colors, making them look more solid, and also kind of stick out against these backgrounds. I don't necessarily think they look bad, they just feel a little awkward, especially in later seasons when the colors became even brighter. I don't know, maybe I'll get used to it, it's just something I kind of noticed. Anyway, Doremi tried to hand over a love letter to Igarashi, but chickened out at the last minute. Yeah girl, that's not exactly misfortune, that's more you just choosing not to make the leap. Though I will give her credit for one thing, I'm amazed she can actually wash her face with her eyes wide open like that. I can't even go into the shower without my goggles. Later in class, we were introduced to a few more characters, including her classmate Hazuki Fujiwara, and their teacher Miseki, who wasn't about to put up with Doremi's obsession with witches. Yeah, I wouldn't mess with her if I were you, kid, not unless you want to deal with her umbrella blade. After school, Doremi found herself lost on her way home and in front of the Mahoto. And in spite of even admitting that she was kind of freaked out by it, she decided to just go inside. I guess her curiosity got the better of her as she even noticed how Majorika looked like your stereotypical witch. And her suspicions were pretty much confirmed after she tried to sell Doremi one of her magical pendants, one of which we actually saw sold earlier and we'll come back to later. But anyway, just before she was about to drop an important plot point, Doremi finally decided to point out the painfully obvious. Could you guys hurry this up? The drummer is getting tired. Of course, she said the W word, resulting in Majorika doing her best impersonation of the Wicked Witch of the West, and then, okay, I was joking about the Zim stuff earlier, but now she kind of does look like the little invader. Well, actually, this is a possible reference to the Final Fantasy franchise, as she had been turned into a frog as punishment for letting Doremi expose her as a witch. Yeah, lady, maybe next time you oughta not dress up like a reject from Hocus Pocus. We learned all of this from her fairy partner Lala, who was probably the curviest sprite I've ever seen. Anyway, in order to cancel out the curse, Majorika needed to have Doremi become a full-fledged witch herself, which of course, this pair of hair buns gladly accepted. You may as well hand her a box of matches. In order to become a proper witch, they had her take a product placement, I mean a device called a tap from her Hammer Space cupboard. Yeah, you know, just in case, you might want to check if that thing has old batteries or not. Vintage toys like those tend to have leakers. All blatant toy commercials aside, I did really like this scene as it helped to establish all of the basic rules of this universe, including how witches transform and the limitations of their magic, with Doremi wasting some of it on creating a giant state that I don't think even Homer Simpson could finish. Still, it was very good world building, delivered in a very entertaining way, complete with a very catchy intro song. And to her credit, Doremi was already a better broom rider than a certain purple-headed cure. However, it didn't take her long before she started to abuse her magic again. I said we're done with the JoJo references. Good thing I saved this one up. She used it to try and help Igarashi while clearly not being familiar with the rules of soccer and penalty kicks. We also learned a few more magical rules, like obviously the frog thing could also apply to a witch's apprentice, and that healing magic worked more like damage transference with the caster taking on the injury instead. Though while Doremi was stopped from using it, another girl who just so happened to have bought that aforementioned pendant from Majorika didn't read the fine print, I guess. The girl didn't mind bearing Igarashi's injury, but I think Doremi put it best.
でも自分が身代わりになって怪我を治すなんて私にはできないよ.
Though after that really good quote, things were balanced out with Doremi once again failing at helping Igarashi with her paws. Majorika covered for her, and of course saw this little klutz as being the titular Ojamajo or bothersome witch of the show. With that, the episode ended with Doremi realizing that Igarashi and the girl had mutual feelings for one another, and ultimately gave up on him. And Hazuki, for whatever reason, decided to throw a little salt in the wound. We also got the ending theme for this series, which I think is okay. It's not exactly my cup of tea, but I do acknowledge that it works as an ED, something to cool down the viewer after the show, in this case basically using a lullaby. Personally, and especially for a show like this, I think something a little more energetic would be nice, but I get the feeling it's going to be used for some other applications later. As the very first episode of this whole franchise, this was a fairly strong first outing. I mean, we got some good characterization as well as some great world building, all of it told at a fairly brisk and yet not at all rushed pace. Yes, the art and animation is certainly different, but I didn't find it bad in any way, and if anything else, Mukoshi's designs lead to some top tier reaction faces. From what I can somewhat tell and have been told, the series is going to get a lot more mature on down the line, but of course before we get there, the show needed to set up a few ground rules, which this first outing did very well. Doremi is kind of your everyday female anime protagonist meant to be very relatable to the kids at that age. That said, I think she has about as much personality as a whole team of protagonists. She's clearly not a goody two-shoes, as she does have some selfish desires like trying to get Senpai to notice her, but she's also not a bad kid either, as she was willing to give up on him and did show a bit of a deeper side near the end. Outside of her, this show is efficiently building its world by already establishing a plethora of rules and limitations she does have to follow. In shows with magic, it's always a necessity to set up some rules so it doesn't end up becoming a deus ex machina for everything. It also helps build interest to see how far this little witch in training can take it. Overall, a strong intro to this very unique series to say the least. I hope you guys enjoyed this first outing with the bothersome witches, and I'll be sure to continue these reviews for as long as I can, so hopefully you'll stick it out with me. And until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and I said no more JoJo references!